Hi everyone, it's Charlie Webster here. Welcome along to My Sport in Mind, the podcast all about opening up the conversation around mental health in sport and life. Season 2 is proudly supported by sportinlife.com, expert insight, passionate opinion, and in-depth analysis for the sports you love, all for free. Today, I'm really excited to welcome Hal Robson-Kanu to the podcast. Welcome along, Hal.
Hi, Charlie. Thank you for having me.
It's been quite a tough season, it seems, certainly on the field anyway. I've been through lots of relegations myself, and fans talk about it so much, but less so on the impact it has on players. What's it actually like for a player? I mean, you went through relegation only 2 or 3 seasons ago with West Brom, with 2008. So what impact does it have on you? What's it feel like?
Yeah, it's not a nice feeling. Like it's you're finishing in the in the bottom three sort of positions of the league. So ultimately, you can't really say you've had a successful season when you've been relegated, regardless of what you've done, your level of performance, what goals you've scored, because ultimately it's a team game. Fortunately, for me, you're being relegated from the top league in the world. So psychologically, we're talking sort of mentality, like you immediately have to pull the positives out of it, that you're at that level. There's 20 teams in the UK who can play in the top league in the world. So it's like the positives are is that you've whether it's you've gained that experience, you've competed at that level, you've shown that you can perform at that level. So really it's just like, what from my personal experience, you just have to dust yourself down as quickly as possible and be ready to get back into that position again, and really prepare yourself to fight for it.
Are you somebody who finds it easy to see the positives and dust yourself off?
Yeah, I think don't get me wrong. Like it certainly hurts inside. Like it's painful, and one. I think anyone who plays in the professional game you have to be a winner, because regardless of becoming a footballer, just a footballer, professional footballer. Like it's a stat that it's harder to become a professional footballer than it is to get into Oxford or Cambridge, based on the numbers, and based on the competitive nature that when you're a kid, every single boy wants to become a footballer. So apart from the anomaly, pretty much every kid will at some point, in their childhood, want to become a footballer and be inspired to do so. So it's like, I think always bearing that in mind, I think gives you a level of of grounding, and you end up not getting carried away, but with the highs and with the lows, because it's like that's the biggest thing. And the biggest thing that I've ever sort of the most impactful thing that I've learned is to not get too carried away with the highs and not get too carried away with the lows. And I think in this case, we're obviously in a low, haven't been relegated, but you need to not get carried away with it, and actually try and center yourself, and as you said, look at the positives.
Yeah, I was going to ask what you've learned over a period of time, especially psychologically, because I'm glad that you mentioned the very small percentage of athletes that become professional sports players, never mind in football, is so minor. And it's really interesting because there's so much studies on how the mind works of a professional athlete, and how there's similarities across the core where it's that almost like one track mind. Is there anything you do particularly that helps you ground yourself? Because I can imagine that's very hard, especially at a younger age when so much depends on it and there's a lot of outside criticism going on as well, and outside noise.
Yeah, I think it's like understanding what your motivation is, and then learning very quickly to compete with yourself. So what I mean by that is, like, you don't use someone else as a metric for your success. So you don't say, oh, he's done this, so I should be doing this. So you never do that. You actually just say, I am here. If you want to go from A to B, that's no problem at all. You want to get from where you are to where you want to be, but you have to realize that it's fundamentally and solely down to you. So when you have that mentality where you then sort of compete against yourself, I think that's the key to, to really making sure you're never, to making sure you almost live like a balanced lifestyle to a degree, like where you're not, getting caught up with because it's so easy to get caught up with everything in life. Everyone's struggling at some point and in some stage, and everyone has ambitions of where they want to get to. And it's like, all the time, it's almost like, what's next? So it's like, oh, if I had this, I would be there. Or if I had this, I would feel a certain way. But when you get there, you're going to want something else, and you're going to want something else. So if you have that, it's fine to have a driven mentality, but you need to know that that doesn't define you, if that makes sense. And I think when you sort of live within that space, I think that's where you really find, what I'd call like, grounded space, grounded being. And like, you don't, like, no one, you're not competing with anyone. You're not, there's no, you don't have an ego to try and like, to say, oh, I've done this and I've done that. It's actually just, I'm on my journey, and I'm, enjoying the journey that I'm on. And so, we're going to go through, ups and downs, and we're going to experience, events along that journey. But, ultimately life is a journey. So yeah, I think that's sort of where I sort of sit.
How real is that as well? Is that like comparison thing? I was just like nodding my head when you were talking. And also that constant need for achievement, and then you achieve it, and then it's like, I'm so bad for that. I'll have a day and then I'll just be like, what's next? And I find it so hard sometimes for my brain to just be like, okay, calm down. So what is your motivation then? What is it, the thing that drives you?
Yeah, I think, like, to be fair, like, I just want to give the best that I can give, and that's in whatever it is. So it's like, whether it's football or whether it's business or whether it's my family, like, I just want to give the best that I can give. And it's, sometimes that might not be good enough for, the ones judging, or the ones, or, the people around me. But as long as I know I've given my best, like, that's really what motivates me. And so, whether it's getting to training and, being fully focused and, preparing right, going through my routine, and then on the training pitch, giving my all. And I think that's something I really enjoy, like coming off the training pitch, knowing that I've given absolutely everything that I can on that day. And I think, any coach or manager who's, you'd speak about, who's worked with me, would say that that's just in my characteristic. It's just like built in me. And so I've sort of taken that into other areas. So, whether it's, business with the Turmeric Co, I do that. I have that same mentality. So when I'm in work mode, like, I'm in work mode, I'm giving my all, I'm fully focused on it. And then, obviously then, with my family, it's nice to then be able to switch off and be with them, and be present with them. And so, I think that's what, sort of motivates me. And so wherever that sits, like, I'm always just trying to do that. So.
Right, you've mentioned the Turmeric Co, so let's talk about that a little bit, because just before we started recording, we were just chatting about where we lived, right? And you said that you when you're traveling to training, that's your time, right? So is that when you work on your business? And I'm so intrigued by this, because I actually do these turmeric and ginger and lemon shots that I make myself. And I started doing them because I spent some time in India, and every morning that's what they'd give us. And then there was an alternative one, I think another day, which I can't remember what it was. And then I started making my mum do it, and then I started making my friend do it, and we all do those shots and we make our own. Where did it come from for you then?
That's fascinating. Yeah. So,
am I doing the right thing?
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, we'll find out how you're actually, extracting it. But it's and what form of turmeric you're using. So, is it powder or is it the root?
It depends. So I've got the powder in my cupboard, so that's what I use the majority of the time. But when I can be, oh no, like what's that? But when I can find it, I do have like a little greengrocers that does the turmeric root, and so then I get the root when, like, I'm around and I've got time and I can catch the grocers.
Yeah.
So is it about
so to give it, so with the Turmeric Co, we're shipping in around 5 tons of turmeric each month. So, or turmeric root each month, sorry. So whether it's the, so yeah, the root is what you need basically.
Right.
But it's, but yeah, so
Lesson is get the roots, not the
yeah,
powder.
yeah, exactly. So, you know, but no, so the Turmeric Co, so I founded it in 2018, and at that point in time, I had been using these shots for over a decade. And these shots are the reason why, you know, I've effectively had the career that I've had. So when I was 17, I suffered a cruciate knee ligament injury and required reconstructive surgery. So was out of the game for, you know, 12 months, came back, suffered the same injury again. And after the second injury, the surgeon said to my dad that I should, you know, really begin looking at a different career path because I would never play without pain and restriction again. And being young and, you know, really determined to have a career, like I was like, no, like I'll come back, you know, it won't be an issue. So anyway, went through the rehabilitation the second time round, surgery second time round, and got back training, and I just couldn't play without, you know, pain or restriction. I was just constantly hampered by it. So, you know, every time I'd warm up, you know, train, I couldn't, like, you know, sprint, I couldn't change direction. After training, my knee would just swell up, and I began having the doctors at the time I was at Reading, they began prescribing me anti-inflammatory. So I, as a 18-year-old now, you know, began popping these anti-inflammatory drugs like Smarties to try and, like, you
That's
know,
so common in sport as well, isn't it?
so common. And particularly, like, you know, we're talking a decade and a half ago. So it was like, back then it was just even, you know, yeah, we've come a long way since then, but it's still apparent in today's, you know, sports. And so anyway, began having these anti-inflammatory drugs like Smarties, and within a few weeks, my body just reacted to them. So I started passing blood in my urine. I couldn't sleep. You know, would vomit, you know, after training, and so I had to stop taking these drugs, which had taken the edge off the pain that I was feeling. That didn't, you know, it certainly didn't resolve it. Or I would have to play with this, you know, this pain and restriction constantly. So I remember it was, you know, just played a reserve game, you know, had come home, like literally played at like 30% of what knew I could play at because of my, you know, physical condition, and went to walk up the stairs, and the pain in my knee, I just couldn't literally walk up the stairs. And I just broke down in tears. And my dad was at the house at the time, and we were just like, there must be a natural way that, you know, that we can basically, I can recover from, you know, the pain that I'm experiencing. So next few weeks, we just went on like a research binge, and we just went, you know, looked at all different like natural ways of like treating pain, inflammation, swelling, and, you know, looked at various, like, you know, documents. I remember we got an archive document on spices, you know, medicinal spices from the local library, and it'd come from China, you know, so Eastern medicine. And eventually, like, we began seeing these patterns, and it spoke about, you know, pineapple, pomegranate, watermelon, ginger, and then subsequently turmeric. And it was like the pattern just kept occurring. So it was like, okay, well then these are the best ingredients for me to really recover from. So, you know, we basically had to get it into a format that I could consume. So again, we, you know, looked into it. My dad then began buying all of these natural ingredients. We realized very quickly that it was the raw root that we needed, and not like the spices and the, you know, what we would traditionally use is like the herbs for tasting, you know, that you'd cook with. We need it in its rawest format. So, you know, eventually got these ingredients together. My dad just began like concocting, you know, this liquid form of these ingredients combined. And, you know, after, probably over 100 attempts of making it, we eventually got to something where I was like, okay, yeah, this is, you know, firstly edible, but secondly, that, you know, I could have on a consistent basis. And I remember the first time I, you know, drank it, it was like, wow, it really knocked my socks off. I was like, you know, that is strong and potent. And being a teenager at the time, my body was just naturally nutrient deficient because of my diet. Like I lived on pasta, chicken, and beans. Like I didn't go outside of that, because when you're young, you know, you just think protein, carbohydrates, etc. So my body was nutrient deficient. So, consuming this, shot with so many functional ingredients in their raw form, it really, I could really feel the effect, almost immediately. And so I literally had these shots. So I had 2 or 3 of these, small little, liquors. We had them in just little glasses at the time. And I had them, my dad would make them every few days and I'd drink them. And within 6 weeks, it was, probably around 5 weeks and 5 days, I literally remember I woke up, was getting ready for, training day, walked into the bathroom, went into the shower, turned the shower, and I was in the shower and I just literally had a light bulb moment. It was like the first time in 2.5 years I'd woken up without pain or restriction in my knee. And it was like, it just blew my mind because as a young teenager, I had no concept of the impact that nutrition had on your body or your physical health. And so it literally was a light bulb moment for me. And so since that moment, I've had these shots, pretty much every single day. And within a year, I'd made my first team debut. A year after that, I made my, international debut. A year after that, I made my Premier League debut. And really, without the range, I literally wouldn't have had the career that I've had. And so, but as we've gone through time, being a sort of in my 20s, my teammates began seeing it. And so I'd give them to my teammates, then family and friends would have them, we'd be giving them to family and friends. And, by the time we, decided to launch it as a, brand, we were making, hundreds of these, little shots a week and just giving them out to people because people were relying on them. And what we realized were that people were using them for various different health reasons. So it was like, whether it was pain or whether it was inflammation, whether it was that, to boost their overall health or well-being, whether it was to boost their energy. And everyone around us was just just addicted to this natural shot. And so, yeah, we decided to launch it because I saw a, health shot, which claimed to be turmeric, but actually was 1% turmeric powder and then 98% apple juice. I saw it on the shelf in Harrods.
They charge about $5 for it or something.
Yeah, exactly. So I saw it in the shelf in Harrods and, 2016, 17, saw it, didn't really look at the ingredients. I was like, yeah, turmeric shot, amazing. We don't have to make it anymore. Finally, someone, a company's clocked on. So bought a load, took them home, went to drink it and literally had to spit it out. Couldn't believe how inferior it was to what we were making. And then, so launched in 2018 and within a few months we were, stocked in the likes of Whole Foods, Planet Organic. We were supplying England rugby national team with the range. We built the business as what they call a digitally native vertical brand. So it's ideally we want to send the product directly to you and build that relationship with you and, have, follow you through your journey as a customer of ours. And, we're now, distributing hundreds of thousands of our, shots on a monthly basis. Tens of thousands of people are using our product on a daily basis. And, we've got, over 10,000, positive customer reviews just talking about the impact that the range has had on their health and well-being. And so, yeah, it's great to be sort of, the founder of the company and, so involved in, building the business and the brand and the team, alongside obviously, being a professional athlete.
It's such a testimony as well that you just said, the fact that you accredit a lot of your career and being able to play like you have done on something so natural. And I mean, it's got incredible anti-inflammatory. I just want to go back a little bit because I just think when you were talking about, well, firstly, your dad's amazing that he worked with you to do that. But when you were talking about that, you not being able to play without pain and being in that situation at such a young age, and you said that you were just still determined, and when the doctor said to you you might have to think about a different career, you were like, no. How hard was that for you mentally? Or were you just
No. Yeah, it was tough. And everyone just sees, the end result, right? It's always the case because then they see, international player, Premier League player, but no one sees, during that period. Yeah, no one sees it during that period of my first injury to that moment where, I realized that I didn't have to play with pain again. I literally broke down in tears, was crying, crying in my bed, dozens upon dozens of times, fear of not actually being able to achieve something I desperately wanted,
Yeah.
like riddled me throughout that period. But coupled with that, I had a steely determination where at the end of every single, time I was feeling like I had that insecurity and that fear, I would then, try my best to match it with, a thought of, just utter determination. Like, no, well, that can, like, of course, that might happen, but I will equally give as much as I can for it not to happen and for me to have, to actually achieve what I want to achieve. And so, but no one will see that. And, the tears, and like, even like after the first injury, when I had the second injury, like you had to go to like through like 2 or 3 operations. So you have to be, go into, general anesthetic 2 or 3 times, where they'll do like an arthroscopy, then they'll do, the reconstructive surgery, then they'll, have another, potentially another arthroscopy if there's, issues. So you're going through these, surgeries, and each one is an ordeal. You're going into hospital, you're going, you're going under general anesthetic. And after the second operation, my wound got infected.
Oh,
And like I had like a severe, like literally like viral symptoms, where I was like literally, like my temperature was through the roof, like I was pale, there was pus seeping out of the wound of my knee. And it's like no one sees that. And to experience that, and the tears and the fear. But looking back now, because I was able to, I was just so determined to like come through it. Like I was able to build up like, not really, like, I don't want to describe it as like a, a steely determination, but it taught me about my mind, and the power of the mind. And it's like you can really overcome situations and scenarios if you can think about what you're thinking about and understand how and why you feel a certain way, right? And what that means is like, okay, I'm feeling fear now. Okay, so why am I feeling fear? I'm feeling fear because I may not achieve my dreams. Okay, well then, is that a possibility? Yes, it is. It could be a possibility. Like, but is me feeling this way at this moment in time gonna have any direct impact on the outcome of that event? Well, no, it's not. So do I need to feel this way? Well, no, you don't. So you can actually be happy in times of, fear, or in times of insecurity. And that's like, it taught me around about the mind, like really, like, and I did a lot of deep and internal, and thinking, and I, read a lot of books around, sort of mentality and your approach to, to overcoming situations and understanding, trying to understand yourself, because you're always on a journey, you're always developing, you're always growing. And so, yeah, I think looking back, I'm grateful for that experience for so many reasons, not only because it led me to founding the Turmeric company, which is now helping, hundreds of others, of thousands of people, but actually because of, the individual human that it helped me turn into. So
it's interesting, the patterns of behavior, because a psychologist I worked with taught similar, where it was like, what are you feeling, to try and connect with yourself to understand what you're feeling. Because I think sometimes we see it so outwardly and don't actually say, oh, I'm actually feeling fear. And then very similar to you, like what are you actually feeling right now, and then what do you need to do about it? As in, like, I'm feeling fear because I'm going into hospital all the time and I don't know whether I'm going to be able to achieve what I'm going to achieve. That's normal to feel that fear. What do I need to do about it? So it's like going through that pattern and that process. On the other side of things, it's when I've spoken to different people, like for example, Johnny May, he was talking about, for him, it's just all rugby and that's all he focuses on. How important do you think it is for footballers, and how much has it helped you to have something else to focus on other than just your sport?
Yeah, I think for me personally, it's been like it's been amazing, like, because I think in sport, like, firstly, like in sport, like, mental health is like so underreported. It's just embarrassing, like, and something needs to be done at a deeper level where professional athletes can actually communicate how they feel.
Yeah.
Like, and it's like, and what I mean by that is the day when you as an athlete can go and communicate an insecurity to a a manager or a director at the club, and for it to have no impact on your career, and what I mean by that is, could that impact how you starting on the weekend? Could that impact a future contract? If you went to a manager of any club and said, hey boss, I'm really nervous and afraid about this game on the weekend, you're probably not going to play, but I can tell you hands down, 90% of the professional athletes who play week in and week out have fear going into a game. So it's like, so how can so people you're suppressing how you feel, you're suppressing your feelings constantly, and ultimately over time, when you do that, that's what causes, you then need to have a release. Is it drugs? Is it gambling? Is it addictions? That's where it comes from, because you're not actually being able to express how you feel openly within the environment that you're in. So I think, like, I think it's for me, being able to I've sort of used what I the business as, I've been able to really stimulate my mind and really keep it occupied when I'm away from the game. And I think some players, they'll look to, as we said, like, when it's when you're having difficulties, mentally, when, in terms of your thoughts, how you're feeling, the mood, which is, very common. Everyone feels, moods, and feels, mood swings, and feels, various things. But some players will look at releases, and some players will have, like, golf as an example. And actually that can be a positive release where they just literally focus on that and, go and release it, then, mentally occupy their minds with that. Or, other players will play, FIFA until, 1 p.m. in the afternoon until like 2 a.m. at night. And it's like, or COD, Call of Duty, which is, great. Like, they're able to, they're expressing themselves, they're taking themselves away from, the pressures of the, the sporting world. And so for me, like, I've really enjoyed being able to channel, my thoughts into, something so productive with the business. And so, I'm managing, sort of probably 30 staff within the business now, and, various functions and various teams. And, it's taught me, and it's really sort of grown my character, because I've stepped into that managerial role while still I'm being a player, being a player and a professional player, where you have managers, obviously, who you have to obviously look up to and, be guided by. So for me, I think having that, being able to compartmentalize the two has been really good. And I think if you are a thinker, some people are thinkers and some people aren't. Like, they're just, if you're not, you're lucky in a sense, because you'll just go with the flow. You'll just go, if it's good, it's good. If it's bad, it's bad. Just keep going. Whereas, like, if you're a thinker and a really deep thinker, then that's where something like professional football can really eat you up, because there are, it's a ruthless industry, and, like, it's so competitive. So if you think about things, like, too deeply, like, it will really eat you up, and and spit you out. And I think so I think, being a deep thinker myself, like, I've been able to really channel that into really positive areas. And it's allowed me to have the freedom to play in the game as well.